The stock market has been on an absolute tear over the past few years, largely propelled by 7 companies making significant strides in the world of AI. As their profits have soared, investors have poured money into these firms, driving up their stock prices and valuations. However, a substantial issue looms, and the more I witness these companies ascend, the more apprehensive I become. While rising share prices aren't inherently problematic and can continue for extended periods, the real concern I see is a critical bottleneck, a single choke point with the potential to severely impact all these AI-driven enterprises. Given that these 7 stocks now constitute over a third of the S&P 500 index, this issue warrants far greater attention. A problem affecting these companies could effectively collapse the entire market like a house of cards. To fully grasp this impending problem, we must focus on one specific company among these 7, NVIDIA. As we know, NVIDIA has performed exceptionally well recently, driven by insatiable demand for its AI chips, such as the H100 and B200. It has become the largest company in the S&P 500, accounting for over 7% of the index on its own, with a valuation of $4.5 trillion. Investors, anticipating continued growth, have assigned it a price-to-earnings ratio of around 50. This high valuation signifies that the market expects NVIDIA to grow, not stagnate. And indeed, the company is expanding rapidly, as its chips are in high demand from major corporations worldwide. In fact, among the other Magnificent 7 companies, only Apple, which designs its own chips, isn't actively acquiring NVIDIA's products. The overarching point remains, everyone wants NVIDIA's chips. However, here's the crucial detail. When asked what NVIDIA does, most people would likely say, "Oh, NVIDIA, they make chips, right?" News reports and YouTube videos often echo this sentiment. NVIDIA manufactures the chips fueling the AI boom. But this is actually incorrect. NVIDIA is not a chip maker, it is a chip designer. NVIDIA's engineers design the intricate architecture of its GPUs, encompassing everything from how cores process data to memory layout and power efficiency. They even develop the software stacks that make their hardware functional. Yet, they do not manufacture their own products. In essence, NVIDIA's value lies in its intellectual property. They create the vital blueprints. This is akin to Apple, which proudly announces its A19 chip in the latest iPhone or the M5 in its MacBooks. In reality, Apple is also solely the designer. The company that actually manufactures these chips for both Apple and NVIDIA is TSMC. That's it, just one company. This singular dependency is where a significant bottleneck emerges. The M series for MacBooks, the A series for iPhones, NVIDIA's A100, H100, H200, and B200, all the world's most coveted chips, almost entirely powering this AI revolution, are manufactured by a single entity. This concentration alone constitutes a substantial risk. But the risk is further compounded by TSMC's location. TSMC stands for Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Company. And, unless you've been entirely disconnected, there's growing concern that China may seek to take control of Taiwan in the not-too-distant future. US intelligence, for instance, believes that President Xi Jinping is preparing Chinese forces for an invasion by no later than 2027. We've observed China constructing and testing new landing ships specifically for such an event, and they are building 70 new commercial ferries capable of transporting troops and armored vehicles, scheduled for completion by the end of 2026. Moreover, recent months have seen large-scale military drills conducted in the waters surrounding Taiwan. While I'm not definitively stating that China will follow through, I find it deeply concerning that the entire AI industry is propped up by this one company, which manufactures 80% to 90% of its chips in Taiwan and has even admitted that relocating its fabrication plants out of Taiwan would be virtually impossible. Now, you might be thinking, okay, that sounds like a big risk, but surely if something happened to TSMC, NVIDIA and Apple could simply use another company to produce their chips, right? Just take their designs to a different manufacturer. This sounds logical in theory, but the reality is far more challenging than people realize. The advanced chips that Apple and NVIDIA design, the 3nm and 4nm generations, can effectively only be manufactured by two companies globally, TSMC and Samsung. Without delving too deeply into the technicalities, the 3nm and 4nm generations represent the world's most advanced chips, soon to be surpassed by the 2nm generation. While the naming convention has evolved from strictly transistor size to a form of marketing, the principle remains: the smaller the transistors, the more you can fit onto a chip, leading to greater power and efficiency. For context, a human hair is approximately 70,000 nanometers thick. These transistors are 3,000 to 4,000 times smaller. Achieving such minute transistor sizes requires an insane level of precision, and only one company on Earth even manufactures the necessary machines, ASML, based in the Netherlands. Each of these machines costs around $300 million to $400 million, and only a few hundred exist globally. These machines are owned by various companies, predominantly TSMC and Samsung. However, the critical point is that even possessing one of these $400 million ASML machines isn't enough to produce 3nm chips. It also demands decades of accumulated experience, specialized software, and established supply chains. And to produce these chips at volume, only TSMC and Samsung possess the capability. So, why not just send all orders to Samsung instead? The problem is that Samsung, despite being the next most advanced foundry, still struggles to match TSMC's production quality. Its 4nm processors, for instance, faced significant yield issues, meaning a large proportion of their chips came out defective. When producing a $30,000 GPU or a $200 iPhone processor at scale, a 20% yield loss is simply too costly. NVIDIA learned this firsthand during the pandemic when it utilized Samsung's 8nm process for its RTX 30 series GPUs. The yields were so poor that NVIDIA promptly returned to TSMC for its subsequent generations. In summary, if something were to happen to TSMC, there's no viable replacement. There isn't a ready-to-go fabrication plant in Texas that NVIDIA could simply rent if the situation in Taiwan escalated. This inherent fragility makes the entire AI boom exceptionally vulnerable. You might counter, but isn't there a massive push for chips to be manufactured in the US? And isn't TSMC building a chip fabrication plant there? Yes, that is correct. TSMC is indeed constructing chip fabrication plants in Arizona. However, simply building a factory doesn't instantly enable the production of the world's most advanced chips. Firstly, these new Arizona fabs are years behind schedule. The first was initially slated to begin production in 2024 but has now been pushed back to late this year or even next year. The second site might not be operational until 2028. These facilities are extraordinarily complex. Unlike a car assembly plant, they resemble something from a science fiction movie. The air inside is cleaner than an operating room, and workers wear full-body bunny suits to prevent shedding even a single speck of dust, as a solitary particle can destroy an entire wafer worth millions of dollars. We are talking about facilities requiring tens of billions of dollars in investment, thousands of specially trained workers, and ultra-specialized supply chains for gases, chemicals, and precision machinery that simply aren't established locally in the US. This is hurdle number one, and it doesn't even account for the talent problem. TSMC's engineers in Taiwan possess decades of experience working with the most advanced 3nm and 4nm nodes. When they brought this operation to Arizona, they discovered that the local workforce lacked that level of expertise. Engineers even had to be flown in from Taiwan just to get things running. Such technical know-how cannot be replaced overnight. Finally, even if these fabrication plants do eventually become operational, they won't immediately produce NVIDIA's top-tier AI chips. The plan is for the Arizona plants to manufacture chips using TSMC's 4nm process, while the latest and most in-demand chips, like Apple's A19 and NVIDIA's B200, utilize 3nm technology, soon transitioning to 2nm technology. Therefore, it will take considerable time before true state-of-the-art manufacturing occurs at scale in the United States. So, while progress is being made, the US is heavily investing in chip manufacturing through the CHIPS Act, and companies like Intel, Samsung, and TSMC are expanding on American soil. This transformation will not happen in a couple of years. Building this entire ecosystem, the people, the materials, the suppliers, the precision tools, will ultimately take many, many years, potentially even a decade. This is why, when I asked Steve Eisman, a man renowned for predicting stock market bubbles, about this, he unequivocally stated that geopolitical risks are the biggest thing we need to watch out for. There is a massive dependency on Taiwan and TSMC. But what would happen if China did invade Taiwan? This is where the situation becomes extremely precarious. While we are speculating, as the true outcome is unknown, TSMC has consistently maintained that if China invaded, they would be unable to continue producing chips for the West under Chinese occupation, even if they wished to. Their facilities rely on global inputs, high-end machinery, specially designed software from the US, and so on. If China attacked, those supply lines would be instantly severed. Thus, even if TSMC's fabrication plants were not destroyed, they would essentially be rendered inoperable, unable to acquire the parts, tools, or support needed to continue functioning. This is precisely why the US is monitoring the situation so closely, and why America would almost certainly intervene if China invaded Taiwan. In fact, the US has made it abundantly clear that they would rather see TSMC's equipment disabled than allow it to fall under Chinese control. There are even whispers of Washington having contingency plans to evacuate key Taiwanese engineers or remotely disable factory tools to prevent their use by China. From China's perspective, if they seized control of Taiwan, it is highly improbable they would simply continue exporting the world's most advanced chips to American companies. This is wishful thinking. Consider that China already controls over 90% of the world's rare earth refining, a strategic move for power and control. This gives them immense negotiating power and leverage, as they control a critical ingredient in electric vehicles, batteries, and defense equipment. If they also controlled TSMC, it would be a colossal economic maneuver, significantly weakening the West. It's truly astonishing. If they were to take this one small island off their coast, the West would face immense trouble. This is why I believe we, as investors, need to be acutely aware of this single choke point in the entire AI economy. Remove one tiny island off the coast of China, and NVIDIA's chips halt, Apple's chips halt, and then you have to contend with the cascading effects on Amazon, Microsoft, Tesla, Meta, and Google, to an extent, and these are just the major players. I want to emphasize that I'm not trying to be alarmist or predict the end of the world, but I do think this is something that warrants far more consideration than the currently euphoric market is giving it today. I'm eager to hear your thoughts on this. Am I crazy? Please share your perspective in the comments section below.